All right, looks like we are live. Hi, everyone. My name is Genevieve Fantano, and I am the MsJDPreLaw Program Director. As you guys know, MsJD is a nonprofit committed to the success of women in the legal profession. But as you see from Joseph's presence on this panel, we welcome men to our events, and we encourage them to join us as allies. I'm super excited for today's Mentoring Hangout. This is episode 3, and it's focused on, so you want to be a corporate lawyer, and we've got a great panel prepared for you. Before we jump in, do you guys want to kind of go around and introduce yourselves?
Oh, my name is Cheryl Daniel. I am a first-year freshman at Dillard University. I am majoring in international business, and I'm focusing in pre-law.
I guess I should go next. My name is Joseph Kemp. I just graduated from John Jay College of Criminal Justice with a degree in philosophy, and I just finished applying to law schools.
Alexi or Vanan?
Sure, I can go ahead. So my name is Alexi Thomas, and I'm currently a JD M.B.A. at Columbia, so between the law school and the business school. I also went to Columbia for undergrad, which is where I know Genevieve from, majored in Hispanic Studies and graduated in 2016.
Great. And I'm Van Ann Bowie. I am the director of the law program at Sponsors for Educational Opportunity. Previously, I was a corporate attorney at Proskauer, where I specialized in leverage finance for close to 5 years. And prior to that, I graduated from Columbia Law School as well.
Yeah. So as Alexi mentioned, we kind of knew each other from Columbia. Joseph and Van Ann, I know you guys through the New York City Bar's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And Cheryl, I know her because her pre-law program advisor at Dillard University is my friend on Twitter. That said, if you're watching this and you're a pre-law student and you want to get involved in a hangout, you don't have to know me already, and you don't have to be my friend already, right? You can connect with me. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. You can find my email. My handle is @GenniePreLaw, so GENNIE Prelaw. And you'll just find me, connect with me, and we'll make it happen if you're interested in being in a hangout. All right, so the format for today is we have 5 prepared questions, and we're going to kind of run through them before kind of opening up for a free discussion. So Cheryl and Joseph can ask any questions that they want. All right, so my first question, so since today's panel is kind of focused on corporate law, this first question is directed at Alexi and Van Ann. So presuming that our pre-law audience kind of knows very little about corporate, so let's start from the basics. When you meet a corporate lawyer, one of the first questions they always get is, so what's your practice? Are you in litigation? Are you corporate transactional? What does this question even mean?
Sure, so I'll take a stab at it. So corporate law in general can encompass a lot of different practice areas. At the core, it relates to any type of law that a corporation or company as a whole might need to engage in. And so that can mean a lot of different things. That can mean labor and employment law. That can mean litigation. If a corporation is being sued by someone else, or if they want to bring a claim of action against another party for, for example, infringing on their intellectual property rights. It can also include transactional law, which roughly means anytime that you're engaging in something that's more contracts-oriented, contracts-based. So, for example, putting together executive compensation agreements. If you were to want to purchase a company, acquire a company, putting together those M&A documents. If you wanted to take out a loan, those credit documents, drafting all of those credit agreements, those are all examples of what that would mean to be a transactional attorney. Aside from that, there's a lot of other pieces to corporate law. You can also be a real estate attorney where you're practicing or drafting and negotiating primarily leases. on buildings. So there's a lot of different aspects to corporate law. So whenever someone says corporate law, that's essentially what they mean. But then within that, there's a lot of different subsets, which they call practice areas. And those attorneys then specialize on one particular piece of corporate law.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so absolutely. I agree totally with everything Van Ann said. So I just to take a stab at it myself, I basically define it as corporate law practice being such that we end up advising companies or businesses, which can include different entities, whether that's a partnership, a corporation, a privately held company, et cetera, on things like capital raises, where they're trying to raise capital to maybe exit, where they're, and we can also represent any of the different entities within a transaction. So that means we can be on the buy side, we can be on the sell side, we can advise the advisor, so to speak. So we can be advising the bankers on a deal. And in that, just to touch on it, giving sort of the overarching definition, I was a 1L summer associate at Simpson Thacher and Bartlett LLP last summer, and I did a lot of capital markets, a lot of international capital markets, a lot of mergers and acquisitions work. So basically, I did a lot of advising bankers. I did a lot of advising privately held companies in Latin America. I did a lot of advising smaller companies within the United States on, let's say, whether a deal would actually go forward or not, because I think there can be a lot of interesting sort of crevices within the law as to whether, let's say, are you an investment company or are you an operating company, things like that. So those sort of small legal details are the ones that we might be contracted to decide before they even go ahead and start the deal. So we can actually end up having a lot of strategic impact as corporate lawyers.
Great. And could either of you briefly comment on the transactional versus litigation little split within firms?
Sure. So most areas of law are roughly divided between transactional and litigation. At the core, transactional, I like to think of transactional law as trying to prevent any kind of controversy from happening. It tends to be more collaborative based when you're working with another side to effectuate a deal. You're coming together with a sort of a meeting of the minds and trying to put together a transaction or a deal. So you're working with the other party. You have an opposing counsel, but they're not really opposing counsel because you're both really working towards the same end goal, while at the same time representing your respective client's interests. And you're trying to, in doing so, you're trying to think in advance. You're trying to think ahead. Okay, what do you want this deal to look like? How should this transaction be structured? And what are some of the ways that we can try to prevent any kind of controversy from coming up later on? We want to essentially prevent the other party from being able to have any kind of claim, or any other third party, outside party from being able to have any kind of claim against us in the future. And so that's, I think, what the goal of a transactional attorney is to really be forward thinking and to think ahead in that way. A litigation is essentially what comes after that. In the event that there is some kind of claim that comes up. Litigators are the ones that try to, for lack of a better word, clean up the mess that maybe transactional attorneys might have not had the foresight to think about. And so they're the ones that are coming in once you have a contract that's sort of gone bad and someone is trying to sue one of the parties to the contract for a sum of money or whatnot. And the litigators are the ones that are trying to fix that mess. So litigation at its core tends to be a little bit more adversarial, because at that point you really do have opposing parties where your goal is going to be very different, if not the exact opposite, as the person that you are sitting across the desk from.
Thank you. That was perfect. So at this point, Cheryl and Joseph, do you have any questions about what was just said?
Not really.
Not really. Yeah, I think she said everything, so I think it was very clear.
Well, my next question is for the both of you. So Cheryl and Joseph, do you know what kind of law you're interested in yet? What are you looking at?
Well, not really. I really don't know because I am a first year undergrad student. So I've been looking into different law fields. I'm interested in education and then corporate and then maybe criminal. But my question would be like, how did you guys find out what kind of law you wanted to practice? What kind of research do I need to do to find out what interests me or what piques my interest?
I can go ahead and maybe speak on that a little bit. So I have known that I wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 16. I had a professor that I had a great relationship with who basically advised me on the difference between an academic or a scholar, let's say someone going for a PhD in, let's say, literature, and a lawyer, both of whom, let's say, have the equivalent of a doctoral degree. And I think having that ability to negotiate, that ability to speak on, the commercial and even social aspects of the world, really, I think that's sort of the impact that you're having within finance, and being able to do that from a legal perspective was so interesting to me. And that was why I decided to pursue law to begin with. And then from there, I was already somewhat interested in finance. So I figured that some corporate law would be the thing that I would be interested in. But I would say that you should definitely just, once you're in law school, still, not discount any of the other fields of law that you're interested in. Because there are plenty of people who are interested in corporate law coming in who end up being public interest when they leave because of the different clinics, the different externships, the different opportunities that are, offered once you're at the law school. So for me, I still did a lot of corporate-oriented clubs because I think that I was just very decisive about that going into law school. But you don't have to be decisive. Once you know that you're interested in the practice of law itself, it's so wide, it's so open. And I mean, there are so many opportunities that honestly, I'm not even too sure about. Let's say being an in-house counsel. For someone in my position, or even for a new lawyer starting out, they might not even understand what an in-house counsel does yet. And that might be the thing that they're most interested in, and that might be where their career is headed for the next 30 or so years. So I would definitely say don't discount any specific area of law. Just go in with an open mind, and I think you will definitely discover it once you start law school.
Right. So I've also wanted to be an attorney for as long as I can remember. And when I was in college, I double majored in political science and business and marketing. And so in my business classes, because I was interested in law, my business school actually offered a few business law classes. And so I took the first business law class and just really enjoyed it so much that I ended up, suffering through advanced business law as well, and really enjoyed that class as well. And it was kind of the combination of my interest in business and how my business law classes were able to merge that interest with my interest in law and political science. And then, a couple of the other classes that I took in college, I think I took criminal procedure, even when I was in undergrad, just to expose myself to different areas of law. It was all of that kind of, allowed me to see that I think this was really, a path that I wanted to take beyond just a pipe dream of a 6-year-old, and allow me to see that I could merge all of my different interests by choosing a career in corporate law. That being said, in terms of what you can be doing, and I think Alexi is absolutely correct in everything that she said, in terms of being open-minded once you're in law school and trying to branch out and explore different things and being open to different opportunities. But there are also some ways that you can start doing that even now as a freshman in college. So, for example, if your school offers any kind of law-related class, I tried to take advantage of any of those kinds of classes when I was in school. So take a look to see if there are any Supreme Court related classes, constitutional related classes. You know, if there are business law, environmental law type classes, you know, those might be a good opportunity for you to just get your feet wet and see what those areas are about. You can also expand your horizons by, you know, what kinds of internships you secure during the summer. When I was in college, I worked for a solo practitioner back home who practiced a lot of different areas. I think he did a little bit of criminal law, bankruptcy, and family law, and personal injury. And so that allowed me to also get to see a little bit of different areas. So I would encourage you to see internships either during the semester or during the summer at a wide variety of places. So maybe one summer you work for a solo practitioner or more of a mid-sized firm. Maybe another summer you might try to secure an opportunity working at an in-house legal department. To Alexi's point, trying to, you know, see what that experience looks like. Maybe another summer you might try to have an opportunity working or interning at more of a larger law firm if there are opportunities for you to do that, so you can really get you know, that insight into what it's like to engage in to practice corporate law from a much larger scale. So there's lots of different ways and opportunities to do that vis-a-vis internships. The last thing I would suggest is, you know, really trying to utilize your network and, you know, get involved in affinity groups that may be in your area, city bar associations that might exist in your area, just to get to know more attorneys, sit on their committees, ask them if they might be open to grab coffee or lunch with you, or just even a 15-20-minute phone call. You know, as someone who's now on the other side, I get phone calls and emails all the time about stuff. I mean, Joseph can even vouch for, you know, for that. I'm very open to being able to meet with students and talk to students and try to shed any kind of insight that I might be able to. And I think there's a lot of attorneys out there that would be willing to do that. So I think it just requires you to step out of your comfort zone a little bit and just be unafraid and make the ask and just, you know, you're a freshman right now, so you have 4 years to really start to do that, and you can amass so much information over the course of 4 years if you start to do that now. So really take advantage of the opportunity that you have right now to you know, to develop your network and just to learn from other people, other attorneys, other trailblazers, minority trailblazers that have come before all of us.
Yeah, I completely agree. So currently I work in-house at an investment manager. So it's in our, you know, real estate, private equity. And it's not like when I was a freshman, when I was in your shoes, Cheryl, I was like, I want to do this, right? That was not even a concept in my mind, right? And how did I come to this? It was basically, like Vannon was saying, doing internships, meeting people. And it was more of a journey than everything else. So I was a bit excessive because I did either 6 or 8 undergraduate internships in law. I don't remember, but basically I started freshman year. I interned at the courts. Freshman year, it was really hard to find an internship because I had nothing on my resume, right? So I was writing like 70 over applications. I had like 2 callbacks, you know, and one of them happily was it was at the courts. It was an unpaid internship at the public affairs office, but, you know, that got me, you know, a foot through the door. I was spending time in criminal court, housing court, family court, and I really got a sense for like what the work in the public sector was like. And then I was like, okay, this is interesting. I think I'm kind of into this law thing, but I'm not sure this is a perfect fit for me yet. So I tried other things. I worked at the Attorney General's office, and then I was like, okay, this you know, prosecution stuff is really exciting, but I'm not sure if it's for me, because I was like, oh, this is emotionally really hard. I was like, I didn't think I was the kind of person who could be like, I'll see this really tough thing and I'll like leave it at work. You know, I think I'm the kind of person who would bring it home with me. So I was like, okay, this is interesting, but, you know, not perfect. And then I tried other things. Through Columbia, there were, you know, opportunities to work in HR at a law firm. And so I was not in a legal role, but I was in a law firm and I could see what the lawyers were doing. I was like, aha, I think I'm getting closer. And then after that, I found another internship in-house. And then again, in-house. And so it's kind of like over time, you're like, okay, there's something here, but it's not the perfect fit. And then you kind of like go in that direction. So I think it is a journey of exploring. And then through that, you'll figure out what is a good fit for you. Because I think personality is a big part of which practice will make you happy. Because like if anyone knew me from 10 years ago and be like, oh, you're working in like private equity, they would be shocked. Everyone would have expected me to be like in like nonprofit, and like trying to save the world. But I found that work, while I feel passionately about it, I just, was emotionally hard for me to do on a day-to-day. So yeah. So,
absolutely. And Cheryl, I think you have the luxury of time on your side right now. And so, so you shouldn't feel when you go into law school that you know absolutely what you want to do. And there's a lot of first years that don't know exactly what they want to do, and that's totally fine. But because you do have so much time on your hands, you can, at the very least, try to close that gap a little bit in terms of understanding what you want to do, so that by the time you do start law school, maybe you have a much better idea as to what you want to do, because you've had so many other experiences that have allowed you to, to narrow the gap a little bit. And then, the other thing, again, to my point on, networking and relationship building, I actually wanted to mention, Jeannie is a great example of that. I feel like, Jeannie, every time I see you, you're at all of these City Bar events, and, there's so many ways that we have crossed paths, and just, being smart about connecting with people on LinkedIn, utilizing LinkedIn to self-promote, to talk about the various things that you're doing and where you're going, what events you're going to, all of that kind of stuff really helps to build your brand, and increase your visibility, in that way. So definitely something to think about going forward over the next several years until you end up applying to law school.
Yeah, and just kind of to give Miss JD a plug, if you're interested in promoting your personal brand, you can always blog on the Miss JD blog. All right, so my next prepared question is again for Van Ann. So earlier you mentioned that you were at Proskauer and you were doing leverage finance. Can you tell us more about this practice and what it was? Can you walk us through? In simple terms, what the practice was about?
Sure. So I was at Proskauer for almost 5 years, close to 5 years, and specialized in leverage finance. And so what that means is essentially when a company is planning to purchase another company, usually, most of the time, they don't just happen to have, say, $200-300 million on cash at hand to pay for the company that they want to buy outright. And so they'll need to seek financing somehow. And there's lots of different ways that a company might be able to seek financing. But what leverage finance means is when a company comes to a bank and seeks to secure that financing through debt and through securing a loan from a bank. And so that's essentially where I came into play as the attorneys representing either the party who was being the company that was being acquired, or the company that was the acquirer, the one who was trying to acquire the other company, representing either one of those sides, or representing the bank as well in securing those or negotiating and drafting those documentation. So each one of those parties, including the bank, and the bank is a very important integral player in this whole triangle, all of those parties have their own lawyers that are representing them and trying to represent their interests in negotiating these documents. And so my practice, in my practice at various times over the 5 years, I had represented probably every single one of those different parties or entities in some capacity. And so, I mean, that's essentially what being a finance attorney is or means.
Did you always want to be a finance attorney, or was there a rotational program? How did you get into this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it varies from firm to firm, the way that they, handle, how you get selected into different practice areas. When I was at Proskauer, they have you're more of a corporate generalist when you go into the firm for at least the first year or so. And so you have the ability to explore different areas within corporate law. And so I dabbled in a little bit of M&A and capital markets and finance, and ultimately figured out that I think the way that finance deals were run, the pace of it, what the transaction was really about seemed to resonate more with me than some of the other areas that I helped out with. And so it became pretty obvious to me somewhat early on that this was something that I actually really enjoyed doing. I understood what was going on, and I felt like I could actually add value in terms of thinking about the transaction and thinking about the documents and things of that nature. And so it sort of happened more, almost seamlessly, almost organically, that I ended up starting to just do more finance work because I enjoyed doing it, and I think I was, I did pretty well at it as a first year, second year associate. So I ended up getting just, more work from attorneys. Unfortunately, what I always say is the reward for doing good work is more work. So,
Ben, I just have to say, so Leon asked me this question in my interview. So someone who used to work with Van Ann at Proskauer is now my boss. And during my interview, he was like, do you know what the reward for more work is? And I was like, what good work is? And I was like, oh, more work. And so it's so funny. It's just like, it comes full circle.
It's true. Especially in the legal profession. But that's essentially how I ended up becoming a finance attorney. I don't know that. I think that process is probably very similar to a lot of attorneys who start out in corporate law firms, because there are just so many areas to practice in. And so I don't think it's until you actually start just doing the work that you start to realize, okay, this is what I like about this practice area. This practice area, maybe not so much. And you sort of start to narrow it down that way.
Yeah, thank you, Van Ann. So next question goes to Alexi. So you have a blog and, certain themes and topics that you're really passionate about. Can you share with us more about your blog?
Yeah, absolutely. So MelaMillennial, that's the name of the blog, is basically a space that I conceived to empower, educate, and arm Black professionals and aspiring professionals who, might not be getting that information from a program, from a school, who I think are very intelligent and very driven, but need a sort of space that's online and that's free for them to really begin to understand the power of networking, the power of empowering yourself as a leader, the power of stepping into the space and considering yourself the CEO of self. Those are some of the ideas that I share on my blog. I think that for instance, Van Ann's the director of SEO, and I think that it's such an incredible program, right? But for instance, I didn't do SEO, and I've never done any of the pipeline programs, let's say legal outreach, that I'm so deeply involved with today, or HSLI. I'm on the board of HSLI at Columbia Law School, which is the high school law institute where high school students come to us every Saturday and we teach them law, whether that's constitutional, criminal, or moot court or mock trial. Actually, it was my students at HSLI who really empowered me to create this space, because I realized that I was a kid who didn't have that growing up, because I was first generation low income, and a lot of the opportunities that I would have loved to take advantage of, I couldn't necessarily because of my own family circumstances. And then I began thinking about the other kids, the friends of my students in HSLI who couldn't necessarily take advantage of HSLI, of SEO, in undergrad, because SEO law sort of a graduate offshoot of SEO itself. And then from there, I decided to just go ahead and create that blog. So not only does it, really have Black professionals and aspiring professionals in mind, I do a lot of work for first generation and low income students or professionals who really just need a space to sit down and process those identities and process what it means to be a professional in today's world with those identities in mind.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of the same feelings and motivations kind of pushed my work for MsJD for the pre-law program, because it's like, I went to Columbia, you went to Columbia, what an amazing pre-law program we have, and the club and everything, but a lot of other schools might not have the same resources. And so by having these conversations online on YouTube, someone else from another school can stumble upon them and have access to the same kind of, knowledge. Because it's like, any pre-law student at Columbia, probably by senior year, you're like, oh yeah, transactional litigation, I got that, right? But that is so rare and so unusual. And so, so definitely, like, sharing the information, that's the big goal. So we are at the 32-minute mark, and we have a hard stop at 45. So I'm gonna skip the last prepared question and kind of just open it up for a discussion. So any questions from Cheryl, from Joseph, just ask away. We're here for you.
Okay, I have one actually. So I heard that some attorneys, they say that they work 80 to 100 hours a week. And I've heard some that say they work, normal hours, so maybe 40, 50 hours. So I guess, Fanan, this is a question for you. In your experience, did you have to do that? Like work 80 to 100?
That is a great question. I think it really, the amount of hours that you work per week at a big law firm will vary so much, especially as a transactional attorney, which is what I did. It's your workflow is very deal specific. And so when you're working on a deal or multiple deals, and you know that the closing of the deal is coming up within the next several weeks or so, then you absolutely know that those weeks are probably going to be pretty intense. And so there have definitely been weeks at the firm when I was in practice that I, worked. I don't know if it was, 80 or 90 hours per week or however many hours per week it was. But then there are also weeks that I worked more of a traditional 40 to 50 hours. And it just kind of all depended on how much, what my workflow looked like at any given point in time, at what stage in the deal I was, if it's a little bit on an earlier stage or in a period where maybe you've already, your side has already gotten all of the documentation done or the drafts of your documentation, and you've sent it out to the other counsel and you're just sort of in a holding pattern, waiting for them to provide comment back to you, then, during those periods of time, you might not have as much work. So it sort of comes and goes. Now that is just, I want to caveat that by saying, that was my experience of being a transactional attorney at a big law firm. Now, if you're in an attorney in some other kind of organization at a smaller or mid-sized firm or in-house or, at a nonprofit, that, the number of hours you work may vary, or it may not, because I still know attorneys at nonprofits that still also work, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So I think it really all depends.
And I think if we're talking about kind of generalizations, you kind of hear that some practices are just worse than others. So like M&A would probably be pretty terrible, and tax might be a bit more kind of stable. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have a question. As far as internships, I've stumbled across a few, but most of them that I'm interested are for juniors and seniors in undergrad. And so I'm just asking for any resources you guys have for me so I can look into ones that are for freshmen or sophomores, so I can be a resource to other freshmen and then just for myself as well.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question, and I think you're right. Most legal internships or internships in the law targeted to undergraduate students, and there aren't very many of them compared to law students, are probably more targeted towards juniors and seniors. That being said, from my own experience, I again remember I had always wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't have any experience, so I had to try to go out and get that experience, and I really had no idea what was what the first step should be. And so I remember coming home, I think my freshman year, maybe spring break, or maybe it was even at the beginning of summer break, my freshman summer. And this was, I don't know if people still use the yellow pages or if you know what the yellow pages are, but it's basically this thick book of just like a directory of small business owners in the city or in my town suburb that I grew up in. I legit flipped open the yellow pages to the section for attorneys. And the very first, I just went through it, and the first person I saw that had, like most of them have like just like a line in their like email or their like phone number, and then some people will have an ad that they've taken out, and I just flipped it open and went through it, and saw the first ad I saw had a picture of a very nice looking attorney. He seemed very friendly. His last name started with a B, so it was closer to like the beginning of the attorney section. And I legitimately sent him a cold email and with my resume, and I said, I came across your name in the yellow pages. And I'm interested in being, I want to go to law school. I'm interested in being an attorney. I want to learn more about what it's like to be an attorney. I want to know more about what you do. Would you have any opportunities for internships during the summer? And there was no posting, there was no anything. And I sent it, and then I think I sort of forgot that I had sent that email, but about a week later, he responded back to me, and I was totally surprised, and, I think he was impressed by my earnestness, and so he invited me in for an interview, and I interviewed with him, and he offered me an internship for that summer. And I subsequently came back the second summer and interned with him. So this was the solo practitioner I was referring to, who had engaged in a few different areas of law. And so I would say that was kind of a long way of saying, I think even if there's not an internship posting available or a job posting, I would suggest that you try to take matters into your own hands and just network with as many people as you can, reach out to people, express a desire and just learning more and seeing, if they have any internships available or if they might be able to. In this case, he basically created an internship for me, which I've heard of many companies or attorneys being able to do for the right person that they're interested in, that they want to help and want to mentor. Again, there are so many attorneys out there who I believe are so willing to want to help young students like yourself, young attorneys, especially attorneys of color and women, female attorneys. And so I think a part of it, I would really just suggest, stepping out of your comfort zone and just starting to talk to people and reaching out to people, seeing what's available. And maybe if they aren't in the position to give you an internship, maybe they have other colleagues or other folks that they know in their network that might be looking, or they know of other opportunities at bar associations or other kinds of organizations that have opportunities for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that, Van. And I'd say that for me specifically, I didn't do legal internships while in undergrad, but I had a very large legal network because I had joined, let's say, the ABWA as an undergrad. And here in New York, that's the Attorney of Black Women Attorneys. That's the Association of Black Women Attorneys, and the M.B.A, which is the Metropolitan Black Bar Association. So you can definitely have those affinity bar associations as well as your local bar association or the ABA, the American Bar Association. And I definitely say that the power of volunteership and the power of just really getting yourself out there and networking cannot be understated whatsoever. So just as Van Ann said, it's really important to really start creating those networks now, because there are any number of attorneys who are interested in educational justice, who are interested in who work within the, let's say, Department of Education, who I've seen are willing to take on unpaid interns and who are willing to take on volunteers who they'll actually then turn into interns later. So I'd really just say, as long as you're able to just get your foot in the door, but also making sure that you're not just like networking. I think there's a difference sometimes between networking and relationship building. And some people network, but they don't relationship build. They don't build those relationships. So once you get someone's business card, don't throw it on your desk and say that that was a job well done, and then never follow up with them. Make sure that you're actually building relationships and you're actually meeting them. You're actually calling them. A lot of these attorneys and counsel are going to be like really busy, but that doesn't mean that they're not interested in you. I want you to know that they are, usually genuinely interested in mentorship, especially if you have a Black attorney, let's say with like life circumstances like mine. I'm so interested in mentorship. But if I don't answer you for 2 weeks, just email me again. Okay. If an attorney doesn't answer you for 2 weeks, email them over, annoy them, basically. But they will be okay with it. And I want you to know that also. I want to reassure you and all the other pre-law students who might be watching that you really cannot underestimate the power of relationship in the legal profession. And that's really what's going to get your foot in the door as a freshman, as a sophomore, for those internships, and what's going to really enable you to narrow the gap, as Van Ann said earlier, in terms of finding the field that's right for you and finding the function and finding the lifestyle as an attorney that's right for you.
Right. Oh, sorry. I wanted to mention one thing, because Alexi, you had such a good point about looking at it not really as networking, but as relationship building. And then another point that you mentioned that I wanted to talk about was volunteering. Do not underestimate the power of volunteering in how that can relate to you being able to build strong relationships with other people. Because as someone who is, I'm very involved with the City Bar Association, and I plan all of these events and programmings, I need volunteers all the time. And you have no idea how difficult that can be for me to secure volunteers. So if I have someone like you who's emailing me and harassing me to volunteer, like, that makes my life so much easier, because then I don't have to harass, a lot of other people to try to volunteer for me. And I'll remember that. And so, that's actually how Jeannie and I came to know each other. Was Jeannie actually reached out to me about a year ago and said, I see that you're running this program, do you have opportunities to volunteer? I can, put together PowerPoint presentations for you. I can do this, anything, you might need help with. I'm more than happy to do that. And I have to tell you that the absolute, in my opinion, the number one best way to, to get someone to remember you or to start building, those relationships with someone is to give back to the other person. And as a freshman in college, you may feel like you don't have much to give because you don't have, as much knowledge or wisdom, but you have your time. And you have the ability to go and, set up chairs and, set up PowerPoint presentations and, help with check-in, all of that kind of stuff, which, if you can build that kind of goodwill with people, people will remember that. And I very strongly believe that will come back and be repaid to you in spades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so kind of talking about a few more steps you can take. Cheryl, do you have LinkedIn?
No, I don't.
Okay, you need to make a LinkedIn profile, and then there's linkedin.com/alumni, and you can filter alumni from your school in like the legal profession, and that will be your starting point for who you can reach out to. And it's like, again, like Van Ann said, you could be reaching out for an internship. You could be reaching out for an externship. Hey, I have spring break coming up. Can I shadow you for a week? Let's say this person goes to court. Can I shadow you for a week? Can I help take notes? Can I volunteer with you? And that would be a great place to start. I find that usually people from your school are very willing to help you out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so we are past our hard stop at 45, but this has been such a pleasure, and thank you so much for the chat today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll keep in touch. All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.